Deep in the Amazon rainforest, there exists a place where Bitcoin is meaningless, where credit cards are just pieces of plastic, and where the concept of poverty doesn't even have a word in their language. But nothing prepared me for my first encounter with the Pirahu people 3 years ago. I offered to pay an elderly man, named for guiding me through the forest. I pulled out a $20 bill, thinking I was being generous. When it failed to provide nourishment, he handed it back with a confused smile and walked away. In that moment, I realized I wasn't just encountering a different culture. I was witnessing a completely different understanding of what it means to be human in this world. A hunter named killed a large tapir, enough meat to feed his family for weeks. It was an investment in a social network that guaranteed his family a survival better than any bank account ever could. When daughter fell ill months later, the entire village mobilized to help. The Brazilian government wants to integrate them into the monetary economy. Mining companies are eyeing their territory. Loggers are cutting down the forest that provides everything they need. They've evolved beyond the need for money by creating something far more valuable, a society based on abundance rather than scarcity. Climate change is altering the river systems that have sustained them for millennia. There was no competition, no showing off, no status anxiety. Children played alongside adults. They brought Brazilian real notes and tried to explain purchasing power. The Pirahu listened politely. Then one of the elders asked a question that silenced the room. Why would we need pieces of paper to get food when the forest gives us everything we need? The Pirahu see this clearly because they've never been conditioned to accept it as normal. Elderly members were revered for their wisdom, not marginalized for their inability to produce economic value. But instead of selling this knowledge, she was sharing it freely with other indigenous communities facing similar pressures. They were not rejecting all aspects of modernity. They were selectively adopting tools and knowledge that enhanced their existing way of life while maintaining their core values of sharing, community, and sustainable living. To them, the forest is not property to be owned, but a living system to be stewarded. This isn't romantic environmentalism. It's practical wisdom developed over 10 millennia of sustainable living. She had figured out how to use modern technology to strengthen traditional values rather than replace them. He wasn't over his grief. The Pirahu don't believe in getting over loss. As mental health crises escalate in developed countries, as social isolation increases despite digital as environmental destruction threatens global survival, the Pirahu offered a working model of sustainable human civilization. Instead, he had integrated it into a larger narrative of community resilience. His pain became part of the tribe's collective wisdom about love, loss, and survival. Unusual weather patterns are disrupting traditional food sources. River levels are flooding. Their gift economy is a relic of the past. It might be a preview of the future. As artificial intelligence and automation make traditional jobs obsolete, as environmental constraints force us to rethink unlimited growth, as social media reveals the psychological costs of competitive individualism, the Pirahu model becomes increasingly relevant. But it depends more on their ability to maintain what they always had, a clear understanding of what makes life worth living. As long as they remember that wealth isn't what you own but what you share, that security comes from relationships, not possessions, that happiness is found in present moments, not future achievements, they'll not only survive but thrive. Plant and animal species they depend on are shifting their ranges or declining in numbers. How to maintain mental health in uncertain times, how to create security without accumulating possessions, how to find meaning without constant growth and achievement. The Pirahu practice what ecologists call regenerative living. They take from the forest only what they need, and their presence actually increases biodiversity rather than destroying it. Their settlements improve soil quality. Their hunting practices maintain animal populations, and their gathering techniques promote plant growth. In a world obsessed with economic growth, they offered a radical idea that enough might actually be enough. Because trust is abundant, where poverty doesn't exist because sharing is automatic, where survival is guaranteed because community is everything. As we face the challenges of 2025 and beyond, perhaps it's time to ask ourselves, who are the primitive ones? In a society focused on individual success, they demonstrate the power of collective wealth. In a culture terrified of scarcity, they embody the reality of abundance. On one hand, their population is stable, their culture is intact, and their land remains largely protected. Brazilian law recognizes their territorial rights, and international anthropologists are advocating for their protection. Young people who learn Portuguese sometimes struggle to fully reintegrate into a culture based on concepts their new language cannot express. They're finding ways to protect their territory using both traditional knowledge and contemporary legal frameworks. They're building alliances with other indigenous groups facing similar pressures. The introduction of any manufactured goods, even gifts meant to help them, creates dependencies on systems they cannot control. When someone experiences loss or hardship, the entire community absorbs and processes the pain together. In Western society, he might have faced grief alone, possibly falling into depression or isolation. But the Pirahu response was immediate and comprehensive. His daily needs were met by neighbors. His emotional pain was shared through communal rituals. His memories of his wife were preserved through songs and stories that the entire tribe learned and repeated. Everyone had a role. Everyone belonged. Everyone mattered. They don't count years, so they don't age in the way we understand aging. They have no creation myths about the past and no anxiety about the future. They live in what psychologists call the eternal present, which might sound primitive to us, but has eliminated the psychological disorders that plague monetary societies. The elder listened again, then asked another devastating question. If your paper money is so valuable, why are there people in your cities who have no food, no homes, no family to help them? Some younger Pira who are learning Portuguese to serve as intermediaries between their world and ours. They're using modern tools like GPS devices and solar panels, but integrating them into their gift economy rather than letting technology transform their social structure. The question isn't just whether they can survive 2025, it is whether they should be forced to. Women took turns caring for her, men brought medicinal plants from deep in the forest, and children entertained her with songs and games. No one asked for payment, no one kept track of debts. The gift he had given months earlier was being returned 100-fold, but instead of keeping it, he distributed every piece to other families in the village. They have zero unemployment, zero homelessness, zero hunger, and zero mental illness as we understand it. Their suicide rate is virtually non-existent. They have no word for depression. They sleep 8 to 9 hours every night, and they spend more time playing and laughing than most people in developed countries spend working. When I asked him why, he said something through our translator that stopped me cold. Food rots, but gratitude feeds forever. He looked at the green paper, turned it over in his weathered hands, and then did something that completely shattered my Western perspective. He tried to eat it. They've built schools to teach Portuguese and mathematics, assuming education means learning to count currency. They've offered welfare programs, not understanding that the Pira who have their own social safety net that is more effective than any government assistance. What I discovered was on just a tribe that never saw money. I found a civilization that had solved problems we were still struggling with in the digital age. I'm talking about the Pirahu tribe, a group of around 400 people who have lived without money for over 10,000 years. Instead of accumulating wealth, they accumulate relationships. Instead of hoarding resources, they share everything based on a complex system of reciprocity that ensures no one ever goes hungry, homeless, or uncared for. But as their world collides with ours in 2025, their survival is just about preserving tradition. It is about whether humanity can learn from a way of life that might hold the key to our own survival. My name is Dr. Amanda Torres, and I am an anthropologist who has spent the last 12 years living with indigenous communities across South America. When I first arrived at their village along the Mechi River, I made a mistake that would haunt me for weeks. To him, this piece of paper had no more value than a leaf. The Pirahu people operate on a gift economy that is so sophisticated it makes our modern financial systems look primitive by comparison. I watched this system in action during my first month with them. This wasn't charity or altruism as we understand it. But here is what makes their story so relevant to 2025. They not just surviving without money. They're thriving in ways that our monetized world is failing to achieve. Yet as I write this, their world is under unprecedented threat. The pressure to modernize comes from well-meaning government officials who see the Pirahu's lack of money as poverty. But here is what these officials do want to understand, and what took me years to grasp. The Pirahu are unpoor. Their language reflects this fundamental difference in worldview. They have no numbers beyond it. I witnessed this during their seasonal festivals, where the entire tribe would gather to share stories, food, and experiences. Compare this to what I observed when a government delegation visited to introduce them to money. The official tried to explain about jobs, salaries, and economic development. The official couldn't answer because the elder had identified the fundamental paradox of monetary systems. They create artificial scarcity in a world of abundance. But their story in 2025 isn't just about resisting modernization, it's about adaptation. I met a young woman named Shiga Gai who had learned to use a smartphone to document traditional medicine practices. This adaptation strategy might be their key to surviving 2025 and beyond. Their approach to land use offers perhaps the most important lesson for our climate crisis. When logging companies approach with offers to buy their timber, the Pirahu response is always the same. How can we sell something that doesn't belong to us? Their survival strategies go beyond environmental stewardship. They've developed what anthropologists call social immunity, a community structure so robust that individual trauma rarely becomes collective trauma. I witnessed this when the elder who had tried to eat my $20 bill lost his wife to illness. Within months, he had recovered not just his functionality but his joy. This social technology, and that's what it is, a sophisticated technology for human thriving, might be exactly what the rest of the world needs in 2025. But can they survive the pressures of globalization? The signs are mixed. On the other hand, climate change is altering their environment in ways they've never experienced. More subtly, The mere presence of the outside world is creating pressures within their society, yet they continue to adapt with remarkable creativity. They're developing new rituals to address modern challenges while maintaining ancient wisdom. Most importantly, they're teaching us that survival in 2025 doesn't require abandoning human values for economic efficiency. They've already solved the problems we're just beginning to recognize. How to live sustainably on a finite planet. Their survival in 2025 depends partly on external factors, government policies, environmental protection, global economic pressures. The real question is on whether the Pirahu will survive 2025, whether the rest of us will be wise enough to learn from them before it is too late. They are living proof that another world is possible, one where money is unnecessary,